Welcome back to Dyson Days. I am Madison Dyson, wife of Mark, mom to Theodore, and soon to be baby number 2. And here we make videos of our day-to-day trying to raise our family up in the Lord, and also a little bit of first-time homesteading. Today's video is going to be a little bit about Theodore's birth story. Now that Evelyn is due any day now, I thought I would hop on here and share with you guys Theodore's birth story before I forget, because I'm sure Evelyn's birth story will be fresh in my mind right after it happens. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. Also, just other things we did this week, decorating a little bit more for Christmas and setting up everything for our home birth. All right, let's get to it. So our little Mr. Theodore is 14 months, just about 14 months. He was born on October 12th. So it was a Tuesday and it was an early morning. So my first contractions started happening around 1:30 a.m. I believe it was 1:30. It was either 1:30 or 2:30. But they were painful. They were not the Braxton Hicks that I'd been getting the weeks before. So once I started having a couple painful contractions, I remember just briefly waking my husband Mark up and saying, tonight might be the night, because these are actually painful contractions, but you can go back to sleep and I'll wake you up, you know, in a couple hours if they're consistent and they continue. So I think we both got to the point where we were a little bit excited and anxious. So it was like, okay, we're not going to sleep, either of us. I also remember, this sounds really silly because now I don't even wear makeup for videos most of the time. But I remember after the painful contractions started, I went to the bathroom and decided to put on some makeup just in case we vlogged or took video of Theodore's birth. So I was like, oh, I'll just put a little bit of makeup on and probably listen to worship music. I'm pretty sure that's what I was doing. But not even a half an hour later, the contractions started getting consistent. So we called the midwife and told her what was happening, and Mark was awake at this time. The two of us were just, you know, walking around, making sure everything was prepped, making sure we had a bag packed, ready to go, because we were heading to a birth center. And this birth center is 30 minutes away, 40 minutes if there's traffic, but because it was 2 a.m., it was about 30 minutes. And we were in Texas at the time. So we had everything pretty much prepared, ready to go, like in a basket, clothes, you know, everything we needed for the birth center. So we called the midwife, and she said she wanted the contractions to be, I believe, 5 minutes apart, lasting a minute at a time for a full hour. And so we hung up and continued just swaying through contractions. I remember getting to a point where I had to bend over like a chair because they were getting so painful. And I also asked Mark if he could like put pressure on my low back because it was starting to get pretty intense. And we had gone to the birth center, I think it was 2 days before, because I didn't know if I was leaking amniotic fluid. So we went in, I think it was 2 days before, and she checked me then to see how far I was dilated, and I was already at a 4. So mind you, 2 days later, I'm at least at a 4. And so my body was progressing very quickly. And the contractions, I did not wait an hour to call my midwife back. I don't know how long it was exactly, but I called back and told her that they were extremely painful, and that I think they're 5 to 7 minutes apart. I may have exaggerated a little bit because I wanted her to know how much pain I was in and that I was serious. So she said, okay, I want you to breathe through your next contraction, and I want to hear it. And I want you to have the next contraction over the phone. So I remember doing that, and this next contraction was intense. I'll use the word intense because I don't want to emphasize pain, but intensity is what it is. The contractions were getting strong and harder to breathe through. So I had to really make a humming sound to help with the pain. And so she listened to that next contraction, which was very intense. And she said, again, okay, I want them to be 2 to 3 minutes apart, lasting for a minute for a full hour. So we hung up the phone, and I remember having a couple more contractions on the floor. I was on all fours, and they were coming pretty quickly. I don't remember how far apart. I think at that point I wasn't even tracking because it was so intense. And I got to a point where I told Mark, okay, it's time to go. Because I was thinking, okay, the birth center's 30 to 40 minutes away. I am in, the contractions are very, very, very intense. I want to feel safe. I want to feel like, my midwife is there. She's helping me cope through the pain. So I got to that point where I was just like, okay, we need to go. I knew that the midwife did not want me to leave yet. So I had Mark call her and tell her we are on our way. So she left her house, we left our house, and we started heading toward the birth center. As we got on the interstate, I remember passing a hospital, and seeing the hospital, my first thought was, oh wow, we could probably just stop here and I can get an epidural and, already be somewhere ready to go. But then I also thought in my mind, okay, I've heard that when I get to the point that the contractions are so intense that I want an epidural, that I'm very close. So I kept telling myself, you're so close, keep going, you can do it. So we were sitting in the car, and I just remember sitting in the front seat, holding on to the handle, thinking, wow, this is intense. Like, I did not expect it to be like this. But it just progressed so quickly. At this time, it was probably 4:30, 4:45. So I did labor for a while at home. Now that I think about it, it was I think the contraction started at 2:30, and we probably called my midwife around 3:30 or so. So yeah, I did not even hardly wait an hour, and I was like, okay, let's go. So we're on the road. We get there, I think around 5:30. So gosh, my times are all messed up. It really didn't take us that long to get there, but Mark was driving under the speed limit because he was thinking, I don't want to beat the midwife because then we'll just sit in the parking lot, so I'll drive slow. So we took our time to get there. It probably took us about 40 minutes. So we get there around 5:30 a.m. So we probably did leave around 4:45. Contractions started at 2:30. Called the midwife about an hour later. Ended up leaving around 4:45. Get there around 5:30. Have a couple of contractions before the midwife gets there. So we're in the parking lot. I go to the back seat and get on all fours. I remember one of our friends from church told me that she had to be in the back seat on all fours. So that was the first thing I thought. Let me try that. Let me try being in a different position, see if it helps. So I had a couple intense contractions in the back seat, and then she arrived. So I maybe had 2 or 3. She arrived there, unlocked the door, we all walked in, and everything was progressing so quickly. I remember she said, okay, let's check how far dilated you are. And when she checked me, she's like, oh yeah, you're ready to go. You're at a 10. So at this time it was probably 5:35. It'd probably been about 5 minutes, and they started filling up the tub. And so I remember I was over, they told me to wait on the toilet, just, I don't know why, but just to wait there. So I had a contraction there. And then I felt the intensity increase and almost to the point where I needed to push, but not quite to that point yet. So I got into the tub and it was scalding hot. So I had to step back out and have another contraction outside the tub. I remember that. So the water was cooling down, and at this point they were back to back. I don't really remember there being a gap in between the contractions. And so not very long later I stepped back in because it was easy to cool it down quickly. So I step in and I'm leaning over the edge, and I have a contraction where I felt the need to push, and I think my body was doing it on its own. The contractions were literally squeezing Theodore out. So I hardly had to make effort to push. So I turned around in the tub. That way I could reach down and grab Theodore, because that next push he came out. And he actually came out in call, which means he still had the sack around him. My water never broke. It broke, the sack ended up breaking when his shoulders reached, when his shoulders came out, that ended up breaking it. So I do remember reaching down at one point and feeling him in the sack still, which was so neat and different. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I wasn't like, what am I feeling? Because it was the first time ever having a baby. So I just thought, oh, this is normal. But that was very cool. He was born in call. And so we reached down, picked him up out of the water, and Mark was right there too. I don't remember all of the details of like where Mark was and how early that he got to touch and hold Theo. There's just a lot of emotion. I was just relieved. And as soon as Theo was out, no more intensity. Everything was just no more pain. I'll say the word pain now because the pain was completely gone. It was great. We let the nutrients from the placenta continue. So we did delayed cord clamping, that immediate skin to skin. And he also did have the cord wrapped around him. I don't remember how it was wrapped around him, but it wasn't anything to be concerned about. The midwife just said, oh, let me get the cord unwrapped, and then she handed him to me, and yep, the delayed cord clamping happened. So we just did that skin to skin for a really long time, and it was a very quick labor, I'll say that. As I'm just making like a summary of his labor, it was very quick, very intense. It happened under 3 hours. So I want to say it's a 2:30. She was born at 5:42, which was like the minute she was opening her laptop to admit me. Yeah, we got there just in time. And so that's a big reason why we are doing home birth for baby number 2. I want to not feel rushed to get to the hospital or birth center. I just want my body to progress without being anxious about trying to reach a hospital or birth center in time. And also we feel like we're prepared to do that. Very excited for this experience. We feel like we're all set up. Yeah, and the second time around, I feel like I'm more prepared mentally and physically. So my body's done this before. The midwife said to expect labor not to be as long, and since Theodore's was 3 hours, I'm assuming Evelyn's will be 3 hours or less. I feel like I'm more prepared mentally and physically. So my body's done this before. The midwife said to expect labor not to be as long, and since Theodore's was 3 hours, I'm assuming Evelyn's will be 3 hours or less. And I can just mentally know each contraction is one contraction closer to having my baby. So, yeah, it's gonna happen any day because we are currently 39 weeks. Not sure when I'll actually get this video posted, but it is December 8th today. And her due date is the 16th. We actually have had two due dates because we've had 2 separate ultrasounds. But they go off of the later due date. So the 12th was one of them and the 16th was one of them. We're going off the 16th. So, well, technically tomorrow's 39 weeks. So yeah, but she could come any day. Theodore was born at 40 weeks and 5 days. Some things that I did to prepare for Theodore's birth. I had learned that eating dates would prepare your cervix for labor. And considering how fast his labor happened, I am repeating that and eating dates. I think it's 5 to 6 dates per day after week 36. So I've been doing that consistently. Whether it works or not, Theodore came very quickly, so I'm just going to continue to do things that I did for his birth. Yeah, it'll be interesting because the first birth with Theodore, I wasn't actually in the water until that very last 2 contractions. So having the pool set up here, be interesting to see how the water helps me cope with the intensity. I think it will be helpful We also have access to the shower and my own tub. So there's just a whole bunch of different things around the house that can help me cope with the intensity. So I'm looking forward to that. I did also tell my sister that she could be here, and I don't know, it'll be different this time being at home and being where my family is. So last birth we were in Texas where my family didn't live, so it wasn't an option to say, hey sister, mom, you can come get the labor. But it was good to be Mark and I for that first experience. Now we do live a little bit out of town, so for her to get here in time is a maybe, and we'll see. I'll let her know when I first start having those painful contractions, but so far no labor signs. I didn't have anything with Theodore that like cues, labor cues that would maybe give me reason to think I'm going into labor again. Yeah, I feel like this video it's now 20 minutes long, just about Theodore's birth. Well, I'll go ahead and wrap it up and say that I'm sure a video or two later we will be telling our birth story for baby Evelyn, and very excited for that. I'm glad I got to tell you Theodore's birth story before Evelyn's is fresh in our mind. And yeah, pretty much remembered all the details. I'm sure Mark maybe would remember other things. If I have any clips from Theodore's birth that isn't too revealing or TMI, then I'll go ahead and put them on this video as well. Other than that, thank you guys for being here today, and yeah, stay tuned because Evelyn's birth story may be here sooner than we think.
Bye-bye.
thanks again for watching. If you haven't yet, I would love a subscription from you. That way you know when we post next. And also give this video a like. Well, I'm sure we'll be seeing you guys soon. And thanks for tuning in to this week's video.